Ladies and gentlemen, here to talk about the fair tax, Mr. Bob Paxton, a.k.a. Mr. Bob Paxworthy.
Oh, thank you. You know, one of the great things about going around and teaching the fair tax is seeing that moment when someone who either really doesn't know much about the fair tax to start with, or maybe for some reason had a negative impression of it, and watching that moment when they realize, hey, this is a great idea. You know, it kind of reminds me of that I was a stock car fan all along, but I really didn't know it until Dad took me to my first local stock car race. And I thought, wow, that's really great. And I've been a big stock car fan ever since. But it's really nice to watch people who are FairTax fans and don't know it discover it for the first time. So we try to help them out a little bit with our little series of Jeff Foxworthy things about you might be a FairTax fan.
Well, if you'd like to put more money in your pocket by eliminating federal withholding from your paycheck or retirement check, guess what? You might be a FairTax fan. And you ask them on principle, which is a higher priority, feeding your family or feeding the government? And the truth is, if you like the idea of feeding your family before feeding the government, you might be a FairTax fan. Now, here's a good one. How many of you are card-carrying members of the IRS fan club? Well, guess what? If you'd like to see the IRS disappear from the face of the earth forever, you might be a FairTax fan. How many of you have ever heard of the NSA? You like the government poking their nose in your business? You like the IRS poking their nose in your personal financial business? Well, if you like the idea of keeping the government's fat nose out of your personal financial business, you might be a FairTax fan. Again, more money. Everybody thinks that's a good idea? Well, if you'd like to receive a prebate check every month from the government that covers the taxes on your family's basic necessities, you might be a FairTax fan. If you yourself, rather than the government, would like to be in control of how much federal tax you pay, you might be a FairTax fan. How many of you are unemployed or know somebody that is? Well, if you'd like to see millions of jobs created here in the United States and a lot of outsourced jobs come home altogether, you might be a FairTax fan. How many of you think the system is fair? If you got the right connections, you can get by, right? Well, if you'd like to see everybody pay their fair share with no loopholes, no exemptions for special interests, you might be a FairTax fan. Who's sending kids to college? Well, if you'd like to save and invest totally free of federal taxation, you might be a FairTax fan. And lastly, if you'd like to put the tax code beyond the reach of lobbyists looking to buy special interests and special favors, you might be a FairTax fan. Got it.